So there's really no way to start this synopsis without reading the opening quote on the back of the book. And I apologize in advance for the language that's about to come out of my mouth. The problem with Taleb is not that he's an asshole. He is an asshole. The problem with Taleb is that he is right. Now, that was from a tweet from Dan from Prague in the Czech Republic, but they chose to put it on the back of the book cover. So yesterday I opened up, as I do the first week of every month, the New York Times Business Books bestseller list for the month, and Skin in the Game is #1. This is a remarkable author. And if you were to say to me, Randy, what's the most difficult synopsis you have ever prepared? This is it. He is almost ununderstandable. He is jumping around. He is a mind. There was a theoretician in rhetoric named Kenneth Burke, and the New York Times said he's a mind exploding. Well, Taleb is a mind exploding. History, philosophy, finance. He's just remarkable. So we're going to jump around a little in the handout. Turn to page 2. The name of the book is Skin in the Game: Hidden Asymmetries in Daily Life. So why is this book worth our time? Well, number one, Nassim Nicholas Taleb is a much talked about author. It is useful to know what his books say so that you can be in on the conversation. One of the things that I've come to understand about the First Friday Book Synopsis is this helps you be in on some of the conversations. Number two, this book will deepen your understanding of how different cultures in different eras handled challenges and got along or didn't. And number three, this book will help you know better what to accept and believe and what to reject. And that's really important. So put a star beside that. It will help you know better what to accept and what to reject. Now let's turn all the way to the back on page 8. We may jump back a little bit in a bit, but let's go to page 8. On the left, Skin in the Game means that you do not pay attention to what people say, only to what they do. Underline that. Only to what they do, and to how much of their necks they are putting on the line. That's the quote from him, and then I include the quote I just read from the back of the cover. On the right, a short history of the books of Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He has the word, and I'm not able to pronounce Italian or Portuguese, but it's a word that I think is incerto. And it roughly translates to uncertainty. And his books really tie into the VUCA acronym, volatility, uncertainty. So book number 1, which I have not read, is Fooled by Randomness: The Hidden Role of Chance in Life and in the Markets, incerto. It took close to 3 years for Fooled by Randomness to be understood as there is more luck than you think. Rather than the message people were getting from reviews, it is all dumb luck. So he is not high on book reviewers. Let me just say that. Book number 2 and book number 3 I have presented during the First Friday Book Synopsis. The Black Swan: The Impact of the Highly Improbable, incerto. Life is the cumulative effect of a handful of significant shocks. Book number 3, Anti-Fragile: Things that Gain from Disorder, incerto. To be anti-fragile is to be the opposite of fragile. I say, the book says, stress yourself on purpose. If you make me say, Randy, what's maybe the most important lesson you've learned in the 20 years of the First Friday Book Synopsis, it may be this one. that if you coast, you're not ready for the next challenge. If you stress yourself on purpose, if you push things to the limit, then when the next challenge comes, even though it's not the challenge you expected, you're used to being challenged. It's a brilliant book. And book number 4, which I have not read, is the bed of Procustes, Philosophical and Practical Aphorisms in Certo. He dedicated this book to Ralph Nader and Ron Paul. So just think about that if you know who Nader and Paul is. All right, a few words about Mr. Taleb. He has a great grasp of history. And I like this, he's very suspicious of histories written in the standard way. For example, he thinks historians focus on war more than human behavior during times of peace. And by the way, there are far more times of peace. And so this is the old idea of it's the common speeches and the common people and the common day-to-day activities that really teach us the history. I think he's right about that. You never know what tone his writing is in. I read an entire chapter and I just didn't get it. And then I read online that he'd written a blog post about it, and he said people didn't recognize that that chapter was satire. It would have really helped if he had said, this chapter is satire. But boy, it was tough. By the way, that's the chapter on intellectual yet idiot. And it's only part satire. Okay? But he doesn't tell you that. It may be quite difficult to grasp his ideas with only one reading of a specific book. I really like my process because I had 100 pages of highlighted passages that I pasted in before I reduced it to the pages that are here. And I kind of reread the book as I reread all of my highlighted passages. And that made the book make a little more sense. I told my wife, I don't understand this book. And then when I finished the handout, I said, I think I've got it. So it takes more than one reading sometimes. He is also very funny and obscure and always referring to real-world people with real-world jobs like garage attendants and Spanish translators. He's very witty like that. And he does not like certain authors and their books, along with other people and groups and entities. And he lets you know about his very strong dislike. And he is, to quote what I quoted earlier, an asshole. But you have to, I think you gain from reading him. Okay, I think this is what he is saying to his readers. Black swans are the rule, not the exception. If you don't remember the black swan, it's something that happens that you had no idea it was going to happen. You didn't even know it could happen. 9/11 was a black swan. And so, you don't know it's coming. In other words, though of course any one black swan is an exception, this is worth underlining. The fact that there will be the next black swan is the rule. Something big is coming that you don't know is coming. Pay attention to the not so obvious that should be oh so obvious. And he has a section in which he says, of course Donald Trump was going to be the Republican nominee. Did you see him on stage compared to the other Republican hopefuls? He said, there was no doubt that one person owned that stage. Now, this is not a political comment. I'm not going to tell you my stance on Donald Trump. If you know me, you know it. But I read that paragraph and I said, yeah, that's right. He may have been mean about it, Mr. Trump. He may have used ridiculing language, but he owned the stage in the Republican debates. Pretty interesting. He starts the book by telling the mythological story of Antaeus, the son of Mother Earth. Skin in the game means you got to have your feet planted in the results. You got skin in the game. And so Antaeus, who was a great, powerful god, had to maintain contact with the earth. His feet had to be on the ground for his power. And so Hercules just lifted him above the earth and killed him because he had lost his skin in the game. So that becomes the metaphor for the book. So, miscellaneous thoughts. Is the Pope an atheist? It turns out that Mr. Taleb says, I don't know if he is an atheist, but don't listen to what he says, look at what he does. When he got ill, he was a pope a time or two back, they did not go to the chapel to pray, they went to the hospital for treatment. In other words, people who say they believe in God to fix things function just like people who don't believe in God. They go to the hospital and get treatment. Kind of an interesting take. All right? The contract pilot who broke the contract. Boy, this is an interesting story. A wealthy guy owns a plane, but he doesn't have an employee who's a pilot. So he needs the pilot to fly his group of people over to Germany for Oktoberfest. And the pilot is under contract with him. But the pilot calls him the day before and says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to fly your plane tomorrow. And by the way, he's the one who got the co-pilot and the other crew, and none of my crew is. We had been hired by a Saudi Arabian prince who is paying us more than you and paying us all that you would guarantee for the next 2 years to fly his group to Las Vegas. So goodbye. And so now the man with money who didn't have an employee who was committed and demanded to be there just abandoned him. In other words, the contract pilot had no skin in the game because the guy who owned the plane who gave the contract didn't put skin in the game. All right, so that's why companies need employees and why employees need companies. Turn to page 9. The essence of skin in the game. If you give an opinion and someone follows it, you are morally obligated to be yourself exposed to the consequences. In case you are giving economic views, don't tell me what you think, just tell me what's in your portfolio. In other words, if you're selling a Chevy, don't drive a Toyota. Mr. Taleb was on a program, and he was asked about Microsoft. And he said, when my turn came, I said, quote, I own no Microsoft stock. I am short on Microsoft stock, that is, would benefit from its decline. Hence, I can't talk about it. I repeated my dictum of prologue, number 1, don't tell me what you think, tell me what you have in your portfolio. And so, not real high on consultants. And I am one. And by the way, only someone with skin in the game will be an honest salesperson. And this was interesting. Where did many of the Roman emperors die? Hint, not on their beds, but on their shields. Wow. They were out there fighting. Roman emperors fighting. Skin in the game is about the real world, not appearances. He says in the book that skin in the game is about 4 topics in one. Uncertainty and the reliability of knowledge, both practical and scientific, assuming there is a difference, or in less polite words, the, quote, bull detection. By the way, at this point you need to be aware that Mr. Taleb made real money in the 2008 downturn by going the right way. That's worth knowing. B, symmetry in human affairs, that is fairness, justice, responsibility, and reciprocity. C, information sharing and transactions. And D, rationality in complex systems and in the real world. So he asks, who should you choose as your surgeon? This is a great little section. He says, you go to a hospital, you got to have surgery. And you got 2 human beings in front of you. And one of them looks like a doctor, dresses like a doctor, talks like a doctor. He's the guy that will be in the commercials on TV about doctors. He is a doctor, but he looks like a doctor. The other guy looks like a bricklayer who is out of breath. He's not dressed well, he's overweight, he's not the guy that you say, that guy looks like a doctor. Which one do you hire as your surgeon? The second guy. Because if he looks like that, and he acts like that, and he has a job as a surgeon in this hospital, he's the better surgeon. That's really fascinating. I don't know if I accept that, but he says, if you can look at somebody and know that they had more to overcome to get there, that's a clue. That's really interesting. Okay, he says he talks about the Bob Rubin trade, who his company ended up being bailed out, and he got a $120 million settlement, and he had no real skin in the game. He said, heads he wins, tails he shouts, black swan. So that was fascinating. Thoughts on skin in the game and ethical practice. The entire point of the book is that in the real world, it is hard to disentangle ethics on one hand from knowledge and competence on the other. Survival is what counts. Actually, to be precise, reality doesn't care about winning arguments. Survival is what matters. I don't have time to tell you all of these, but I will tell you this, that the assassins didn't really assassinate many people. And he tells one story about a ruler who woke up one morning and there was a dagger right by his head in the bed with a note signed by the assassin. And basically what the dagger was saying is, I could have killed you, but I didn't. Get along with us. And lo and behold, it worked. All right, turn to page 10. I did not take time to read you the key Randy's highlighted passages from this. If you haven't figured out, my system is I've got a lot of them, and when they're in bold, I think they're a little more important, and when they're larger font, they're especially important. For example, don't turn back, but the more robust silver rule over the golden rule is do not treat others the way you would not like them to treat you. So, here are my lessons and takeaways. Number one, maybe the only thing you can know is that you don't know. And you can't know everything. Number two, though it is okay to be surprised by a certain uncertainty, a specific uncertainty, a black swan, don't be surprised when there is another black swan. There will always be the next black swan. Number three, where do you have skin in the game? In which part of your life, including your work life? If you're going to recommend somebody to be hired, would you hire them if you had the opening yourself? Do you have skin in the game? Number four, do you trust any people without skin in the game? Maybe you need to raise your beware of blank meter. Beware of false messages. And number five, you read this, and he has book after book reference, you likely need to read more widely. And there may be a book or three you need to read carefully more than once. Skin in the game, hidden asymmetries in daily life. Hope you found this useful. Thank you very much.